If you have already seen the clip, you know exactly which one I am talking about. Jimin, kneeling down in front of a little girl with a shaved head, in the middle of a packed AT&T stadium, handing her the keychain that was hanging off his own belt, and then leaning in to kiss her on the cheek while the entire section around them erupted. If you have not seen it yet, stop whatever you are doing right now, because by the end of this video you're going to understand why this 15-second clip has quietly become one of the most talked about moments of the entire ARIRANG World Tour, and why almost everyone who shared it online got the story only half right. Here is what most people think happened. They think Jimin, in the middle of performing to 80,000 screaming fans, just happened to notice a kid in the crowd, felt a spontaneous wave of affection, and decided on the spot to walk over and make her night. That is a version that spread across TikTok and X within hours. That is the version that made ARMY around the world cry into their pillows. And honestly, if that was the whole story, it would already be one of the sweetest things BTS has done on this tour. But it is not the whole story. Not even close. And once you know what was actually happening in that section of the stadium, the entire moment hits completely differently. Let's rewind and set the scene properly, because context is everything here. This was August 15th, the first of 2 nights BTS performed at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, as part of the North American leg of the ARIRANG World Tour. 2 shows, back-to-back, August 15th and August 16th, both kicking off at 8 in the evening local time, in a stadium that seats tens of thousands of people. This is one of the biggest venues on the entire tour, home turf for the Dallas Cowboys, the kind of building that swallows sound and still somehow makes it feel intimate when 80,000 voices sing the same song at once. If you have never been inside AT&T Stadium, picture a building so massive it has its own nickname, Jerry World, and imagine that scale of space completely full, every seat occupied, every phone light up, all of it aimed at 7 guys on a stage in the middle of Texas. Now, somewhere in that ocean of people, there was one specific section that looked a little different from the rest. Closer to the stage, a dedicated space, and in that section were a group of children, some of them visibly going through something much harder than the average day at a concert. Shaved heads, hospital bracelets peeking out from under BTS merchandise, parents standing close, phones raised, that particular kind of nervous excitement you only see when a family has been waiting for a moment for a very long time. Because here is the reveal, here is the part that changes everything. That section was not general admission. It was not a lucky upgrade or a fan club perk. That section existed because of a program called I Wish to Meet, run by the Make-A-Wish Foundation, one of the largest and most respected charitable organizations in the entire world. If you are not familiar with Make-A-Wish, and a lot of people outside the world of childhood illness advocacy are not, let me give you the quick version, because you need to understand this to understand why what Jimin did was so much bigger than a nice gesture. Make-A-Wish is a non-profit organization founded back in 1980, headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, and it exists for one specific, heartbreaking, beautiful purpose: to grant the wishes of children who have been diagnosed with critical illnesses. We're talking about kids fighting cancer, kids fighting rare and life-threatening conditions, kids whose entire year might be built around hospital visits, treatment schedules, and uncertainty that no child should ever have to carry. Make-A-Wish steps in and asks these children one question: if you could have anything in the world right now, anything at all, what would it be? And then the foundation works, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, to actually make that wish come true. Some kids wish to meet an athlete. Some wish to go to Disney World. Some wish for a trip, or a puppy, or to be a superhero for a day. And some kids, a lot of kids apparently, wish to meet BTS. That is what I Wish to Meet specifically refers to, the part of the Make-A-Wish program built around connecting children with the celebrities, athletes, and public figures they admire most. So when you watch that clip again, and I promise you are going to want to watch it again after this, you are not watching a random fan interaction. You are watching the final step of a process that likely started long before this tour was even announced. Somewhere, a child sat down, maybe with a wish coordinator, maybe with their family, and said the words, I want to meet BTS. And somewhere between that moment and August 15th in Arlington, an entire chain of people worked behind the scenes, quietly, with no cameras rolling for most of it, to make sure that wish became real. Think about the scale of what that actually means for a second, because I want you to sit with this. A child who is fighting for their life, life, going through treatments that most adults could not imagine enduring, chose, out of every single thing in the entire world they could have asked for, to spend one of their wishes on seeing Jimin and the rest of BTS in person. Not a trip to a theme park, not a shopping spree, a concert, a chance to be in the same room, breathe the same air, feel the same bass drop through the floor as 7 men who, through music alone, somehow became important enough to this child's life that meeting them became a dying wish-level priority. That is the emotional weight sitting underneath that 15-second clip everyone has been reposting. And this is where the story gets even more interesting, because this is not the first time something like this has happened around BTS, and it is definitely not the first time Jimin specifically has been quietly involved in this kind of work. Fans with long memories will remember a much earlier moment, all the way back in 2016, involving a teenager named Angelica who was living with an incurable illness. Through Make-A-Wish, Angelica got to meet the full group, and BTS did not just take a photo and move on. They each personally wrote her a letter by hand from the heart, letter she reportedly kept and framed in her room. That was nearly a decade ago. 9 years later, in Arlington, Texas, in front of 80,000 people, that same spirit showed up again, except this time captured on someone's phone and shared with the entire world in real time. And if you have been following Jimin's career closely, and I know a lot of you watching this have, none of this should actually surprise you, because this fits a pattern that stretches back years. This is a man who, according to Korean media reports, has quietly donated the equivalent of tens of thousands of dollars to education foundations across multiple regions of South Korea, funding scholarships for underprivileged students, and reportedly asked for no ceremony, no press release, no public credit. The donations only became public knowledge because journalists happened to report on them after the fact. That is not the behavior of someone doing charity for the optics. That is a consistent, years-long pattern of someone who apparently believes quiet generosity matters more than visible generosity. So when you put the Arlington moment next to that pattern, it stops looking like an isolated feel-good clip and starts looking like exactly who this person has reportedly been the entire time. Just this time, the cameras happen to catch it. Now let's actually walk through what we can see in the footage itself, because the details matter here, and I do not want you to miss any of them. In the clip, Jimin makes his way toward this section of children, and he does not just wave from a distance the way a lot of performers might during a massive stadium show where security and choreography timing usually keep the members moving. He stops. He gets close. He kneels down to be at eye level with the little girl, which if you think about the logistics of a stadium show with cameras, choreography cues, and thousands of people watching every second, is not a small thing to pause for. He takes the keychain that was attached to his own outfit, something he was physically wearing, and hands it to her directly, not through a staff member, not tossed from a distance, but placed into her hands. And then he leans in and kisses her on the cheek, a moment so gentle and so human that even people who have watched 1,000 celebrity fan interactions online said this one felt different. Later in that same show, he also reportedly tossed his own cowboy hat into the crowd as a gift, adding to a night that was clearly, deliberately, built around giving something real to the people in that stadium, not just a performance to watch from a distance. I want to be careful here, because accuracy matters more than hype, and I am not going to sit here and tell you every single detail of this child's medical situation, because frankly, that information belongs to her and her family, not to content creators looking for an emotional hook. What has been reported by multiple outlets covering the concert is that this section of children was connected to the Make-A-Wish, I Wish to Meet program, a program specifically designed for kids facing serious, critical illnesses. Beyond that, we are not going to speculate on specifics that have not been confirmed, because this is a real child going through something real, and she deserves to have her story told with respect, not turned into clickbait beyond what is already publicly known and verified. But here is what we can talk about, and what I think deserves way more attention than it has gotten so far. What this moment says about the actual scale of what BTS has become, especially here in the United States. Because let's be honest, if you are watching this and you are not deep into the K-pop world, you might still be picturing BTS as just a boy band, 7 good-looking guys who dance and sing catchy songs. And sure, that is part of it. But when a charitable organization as massive and as respected as Make-A-Wish, an organization that has partnered with everyone from professional athletes to Disney to major sports leagues, decides to build an entire wish category around meeting this specific group, that tells you something about the size of a cultural footprint we are actually talking about. This is not a niche fandom thing anymore. This is mainstream American charitable infrastructure recognizing that meeting BTS is a top-tier wish for children across this country, right alongside meeting your favorite quarterback or visiting Disney World. And if you are new to this whole world, if you clicked on this video because the clip showed up on your feed and you had never really paid attention to BTS before, welcome. Seriously, welcome, because you are walking into this story at an incredible time. This tour, the ARIRANG World Tour, has been stacking moment after moment like this all year, city after city, and Jimin specifically has become known among fans for exactly this kind of thing. The quiet gestures that only make sense once you dig one layer deeper. If this video is doing its job right now, you should be feeling that itch, that wait, I need to know more about this feeling. And if you are, do yourself a favor and hit subscribe right now, because we are covering this entire tour, stop by stop, moment by moment, and you do not want to miss what happens next as this tour keeps moving across North America. Let's talk for a second about why this particular clip spread the way it did. Because the internet does not usually agree on what deserves to go viral, and yet this one crossed language barriers, crossed fandom lines, and ended up in front of people who could not tell you a single BTS song title. I think it comes down to something simple. We are all, on some level, exhausted by manufactured celebrity moments. We have all seen the calculated photo ops, the PR-approved charity visits with a camera crew standing by the entire time. This did not look like that. This looked like a person reacting to a child in front of him with actual, unscripted tenderness, in the middle of a show that had a million other things happening at the exact same second. That contrast, the enormous scale of a stadium tour against the intimacy of one kneeling, one keychain, one kiss on the cheek, that is what makes people stop scrolling. That is what makes people who have never once thought about K-pop suddenly go, okay, who is this guy? And that is genuinely the story I want you to walk away from this video with. Not just BTS did something nice, because plenty of celebrities do plenty of nice things and it barely registers. The story is that this specific member has, over years, built a quiet and consistent record of generosity that had nothing to do with cameras until, one night in Arlington, the cameras happened to be there anyway. The donations to Korean education foundations were not filmed. The scholarship funding was reportedly requested to be anonymous. This keychain moment only exists publicly because a fan happened to catch it on their phone. Which raises the question that I think is actually the most interesting part of this entire story. How many other moments like this have happened that we simply never saw? I want you to think about that for a second, genuinely, because I think it reframes the entire clip. If this is the version of generosity that gets caught on camera by accident, in the middle of an 80,000-person stadium show, what does that suggest about the version that never gets caught at all? About the Wish kids who meet members backstage with no phones allowed, no clips online, no viral moment, just a private meeting that mattered enormously to one family and was never meant for public consumption in the first place. That is not something I can prove to you with a source or a citation, but it is something worth sitting with. Now, if you are the kind of viewer who likes to know the receipts, and I respect that, here is what we can actually confirm with real sourcing. The concert took place at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, on August 15th, with a second show on August 16th, both part of the ARIRANG World Tour's North American leg. Multiple outlets, including Spanish-language entertainment press, picked up and reported on the moment within hours of it happening, specifically confirming that the section of children Jimin visited was connected to the Make-A-Wish Foundation's I Wish to Meet program. The keychain gift, the kiss on the cheek, and the later cowboy hat toss into the crowd have all been documented across multiple fan-recorded clips from the venue that night. What has not been confirmed, and what we are not going to pretend to know, is the specific personal story of the child involved, her name, or her exact medical situation, because that information has not been made public by her family or by Make-A-Wish, and it is not our place to guess at it. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a moment that is simultaneously simpler and bigger than the version that went viral. Simpler, because at its core, it really was just a man kneeling down to hand a little girl a keychain and give her a kiss on the cheek, an act that takes maybe 10 seconds. but bigger, because that 10 seconds sits at the end of a much longer story involving a wish, a foundation, a family, months or possibly years of hope, and a member of one of the biggest groups on the planet choosing to stop in the middle of a stadium show and actually be present for it instead of rushing through it. If this is your first time hearing the full story behind this clip, drop a comment and let us know, because I am genuinely curious how many people saw this moment online without ever learning the Make-A-Wish connection behind it. And if you already knew, tell us where you first saw the clip, because this one traveled fast, and I want to know how far it actually reached outside the usual fan spaces. Either way, if this kind of deep dive is something you want more of, the kind where we do not just show you the clip, but actually dig into the story behind it, hit that subscribe button, because we are tracking every single stop of this tour as it happens. And trust me, Arlington was not the last surprise this tour is waiting. Let's zoom out for a second, because I think it is worth putting this single night in Arlington inside the bigger picture of what this entire tour has actually looked like so far. The ARIRANG World Tour has not just been about set lists and stage design, even though both of those have been spectacular in their own right. It has been a tour defined, city after city, by moments that spill outside the boundaries of a normal concert. Fans meeting members backstage, surprise interactions with athletes and public figures showing up at soundcheck, small, human gestures that keep surfacing between the massive production numbers. Arlington was not an outlier. Arlington was, in a strange way, exactly what this tour has trained us to expect, even though nothing can fully prepare you for a moment this personal happening in a building this enormous. And I keep coming back to the math of it, because the math is what makes this hit so hard. A stadium the size of AT&T Stadium is built to make an individual person feel small. That is not a criticism, that is just architecture. Tens of thousands of seats, a stage the size of a city block, screens larger than most apartment buildings. Everything about that environment is designed for scale, for spectacle, for the kind of overwhelming, communal experience that a stadium tour is supposed to deliver. And inside all of that scale, for about 10 seconds, one person made the entire building shrink down to the distance between two faces. That tension between the biggest possible stage and the smallest possible gesture is exactly why this clip did not stay inside the fandom. It broke out because that kind of contrast is universally recognizable, whether you know who Jimin is or not. I also think it is worth saying plainly that this is not a story about one perfect celebrity doing one perfect thing. Nobody involved needs to be turned into a saint for a single video to be meaningful. What makes this moment worth fully unpacking, instead of just reposting and scrolling past, is the pattern sitting behind it. A pattern of scholarship donations, made with explicit requests for no publicity. A pattern that stretches back multiple regions and multiple years, all handled quietly, all only surfacing because journalists eventually reported on paperwork that was never meant to be a headline. When you line that pattern up next to a stadium full of children whose biggest wish in the world was simply to be in the same room as this group, the Arlington clip stops feeling like a random viral moment and starts feeling like the visible tip of something a lot bigger, something that has apparently been happening quietly for a long time. So here's what I want you to do with all of this. First, if you have not already, go find the original clip, watch it one more time, but this time watch it knowing exactly what that section of the crowd represented. Notice how he does not rush. Notice the eye contact. Notice that in a show built around massive choreography and split-second timing, he chose to slow everything down for one child. Second, if you are new here and this is the video that pulled you into this world, comment and tell me where in the United States you are watching from, because I want to see exactly how far the story traveled outside the usual fan circles, and I want to build more content specifically for people discovering this for the first time. Third, and this one matters more than you think, if channels like this one are the reason you found out the real story behind a clip instead of just the surface-level version, everyone else is posting. That is exactly why we do this, and the best way to make sure you catch every single follow-up moment from this tour is to hit subscribe right now before you close this tab and forget. Because here is the truth about a tour this massive. For every clip that goes viral, there are almost certainly dozens more moments happening in stadiums like this one that nobody outside that section will ever see. Wish kids meeting members before doors even open. Quiet backstage moments with no phones in sight. Interactions that were never meant to end up online and only exist for the one family who was actually there. Arlington gave us a rare, accidental window into that world, caught by a fan's phone at exactly the right second. That is precisely why it deserves more than a quick share and a heart emoji. It deserves the full story, the one you just watched. Before you go, share this video with someone who still thinks of BTS as just another pop group, because moments like this are exactly the kind of thing that changes people's minds. Not the choreography, not the chart records, not the stadium sizes, but this, a child, a keychain, and 10 seconds that meant more than most of us will ever fully understand. That is the story behind the clip everyone has been sharing, and now you know it. See you in the next one.